We're going to begin talking about decimals for section 8. There's a table in your workbook on page 2-49 that you can go to, which is going to look very similar to this. Decimal notation is a way to note part of a whole, just like a fraction. However, the format is different. We call it decimal notation. Decimal notation, when we write decimals, has three parts. The first is, then we have a decimal point. For that, we're going to use the word, and we have the decimal portion of our numeral. Let's review base 10 numbers. We have our ones place, 10, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, 100,000s, millions. All of these, after the word 1, 10, 100, and so forth, we see the letter S if it were to be plural. On the right side of the decimal is the decimal place values. We have 1/10, the 100ths, 1,000ths. I want you to notice after the word 10, it's after 100, it's THS. After 1,000, it's THS. 10,000ths, 100,000ths, million. On the right-hand side of the decimal, also note there's not 1th place. The first place is not a 1th. It is actually the 10th, 100, 1,000, 10,000s, and so forth. If I were to look at this, we have the number 17. So we read the whole number 17 first. And I would read this numeral in the same way I would read a whole number, 758. And then I count the place value. The 8 is in the place value for the thousands. So this would be 17 and 758 thousandths would be the way we would write that in word form, or the way that we would read that. As we look here, we need to write the whole number in words. So first we're looking at our whole number 17, then we're looking for the word and. 17 and, all of these start with 17 and. When I read this as a whole number, it's 47. All of these read 47. What's important is the last place, the value. This is the tenths place. This is the hundredths place. Okay, so we can eliminate C and D. It's going to either be A or B. Since it is the decimal part of the place value, is it hundreds with an S or hundredth with the THS? It's going to be this one, the hundredths with the THS. That's the place value. When you're writing or reading a decimal in words, you will write out the whole number part in words first. You write the word and for the decimal point, and then you will write the decimal part as if it were a whole number, and then you follow with the place value. Let me give an example. For this one, I would write my whole number, which is 3. Where the decimal is, we use the word and. If I were to read these 3 digits as a whole number, it would be 14. And then I count the place value, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So then I write 1,000 at the end. So this would be 3 and 14 thousandths if I were to write that in words. Let's look at this one. Which of the following represents, we have a negative sign, a decimal, 704, okay? So we know it begins as a negative. I'm going to read this as 704. 700, all of these read as 704. Now I need to count my place value. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. It's going to be one of the last two. The THS, thousandths, is the one that represents what we're looking for. Write this decimal in words, okay? So we have 436 and 436. Oh, now we can eliminate the first one. They don't use the word and. So we know that's not an option because they use the word point. 436 and, all of these have that. As we read this as a whole number, it's just the word 1. These all have 1. Now let's look at place value. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we are looking at C as our choice. Okay? Write a word name as you would on a check for the dollar amount. Okay, so in this scenario, we're looking at if you were to be writing a check, we would start with 332, and then we would have the and. So 332 and, we can eliminate this one because this one uses the word point. Hang on just a second. Okay, so we can eliminate this one. It has point, so we can't use that one. And when we do money on a check, we would write 49 as a fraction, 49 over 100. Actually, one of these top two, we can go ahead and eliminate too. When we read this, is it 332 or 332? 332 and 49 over 100. So we can eliminate this one because they wrote 332. They didn't put the 300. This one did not write it in the form of a fraction. This is a real application of when you use this. So when you're writing a check for my cell phone bill of $59.68 to Bell South, I would put my date. Today is September. Today is September 14th, 20. You would fill in here who you're making it payable to, which is to Bell South. I would then include my amount, which is $59.68. We write that as a decimal. Here on this line, I would write 59 and then I would do 68 over 100, squiggle some marks here. I'd make a memo. This is for my cell phone. And then we would sign it with our signature. Okay? Write each decimal in numbers. So we're going to take what they gave us and we're going to write this in standard form. We write it in numbers. 2 is standard form. So 4 and 4, and then we have our decimal for the and. So what we have here is the numeral 4. For and, we're going to use our decimal. Now, when I do the second part, 600ths, what I like to do is I like to look at the place value hundredths. If you will, draw lines for little tick marks for place values. So we have the tenths place and then the hundredths place. If I'm going to write 600ths, would the 6 go here or would the 6 go here? Think about it. If I put a 6 in the first place, that would read as a 60. If I put the 6 in the second place, I'd have to add a 0 in front. So when I look at these two and I write it down, I can determine it's not the first choice. It's not going to be 60. It's going to be the 06. Read it as if it were a whole number of 6 and then count the place value tenths, hundredths. Let's do that on another one. Write the decimal number in standard form. It's a negative, so I just write my negative sign. 109. 109 would be 109. And is my decimal. 785 thousandths. So let's count out the place value. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 785 would be 3 digits. I only have 3 places. So 785 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 79 ten thousandths. Write the decimal number in standard form. So this one does not have a whole number. So we're going to start with a 0 with a decimal. If the place value is 10 thousandths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths, we have a 79. So if you think about this, and when you're doing these, if you're confused at the beginning, you can write it where 7 would be in the first 2 places, be in the middle 2 places, or where in the last 2 places. So if you're unsure, jot them down. If I put it in the first 2 places, I'd have to add zeros. This read as 79. No, that reads as 7,900. If I put it in the middle 2 places, this would read, and I have to add here, this would read as 790. That is not the number. If I put it in the last 2 places, I need to come back and fill in some zeros. This is read as 79. So I would use 0079. That's read as 79. And then my place value is 10,000. Write the decimal as a fraction or a mixed number, and then write your answer in simplest form. So I have the number 2, and it is in the tenths place. So that will be 2 over 10. Both of these numbers are even, so they're both divisible by 2. 2 divided by 10 divided by 2 is 5. So that in simplest form would be 1/5. If you would like to use your calculator as you're simplifying, you could type in your 2 tenths. As you see, that is the 0.2. And when you press math and enter 2 times, that's going to simplify it to fraction form. Or you can send from the beginning 0.2 and then math, enter, enter. And that will convert your decimal to a fraction, and it'll already be in reduced form. Here we want to write this, we have 6.6. So this is going to end up being a mixed number, a combination of a whole number and a fraction. So we have 6 and we have 6 over 10. 6 and 10 are both even, they're divisible by 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So that will be 6 3/5. Here we could key in. Now I would not key in per se the 6 necessarily, just do the 6/10, math, enter, enter, and it's going to simplify that to, one more time, it's going to simplify 6/10 to 3/5. If you were to have typed in alpha y equals, and if you chose number 2 and typed in your mixed number, 6 and 6/10, if you key that in, and we want to convert it to the mixed number in lowest terms, that would be, let's see, alpha y equals, choose number. That would give us our 6 3/5. As we continue here, we want to write the following decimal as a fraction or mixed number in lowest terms. Our whole number here is 5. We read this as a 2, and the place value is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that will be 2 over 1,000. Both of these are even. We can divide them by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Half of 1,000 is 500. And 1 over 500. You could easily key that in as your 2 divided by 1,000. Math, enter twice, and that will convert that to your 1 over 500. Again, write this decimal as a fraction or mixed number. So this will be a fraction. There is no whole number at the beginning. We have 3,205 over, the place value is tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. If you're doing this longhand, they're both divisible by 5. You could reduce it that way. Or we have 3,205 divided by 10,000. We're going to do math and enter twice. 641 over 2,000. 641 over 2,000. And that would be your fraction in its simplest terms. You will also be given charts to complete. For this one, what we want to do is we need to convert either decimal number into standard form or into words, fraction notation. In this case, they're not asking to reduce necessarily. Depending on what you're doing, look at the instructions if they ask you to reduce. So for this one, if they give me 8/10, if I need to write that in decimal form, that's going to be 0.8. 0.8. That would be my 8/10. As a fraction, that would be 8 over 10. If they ask me to reduce that, that would be reduced to a 4/5. For the second one here, what I have is, and if we write this in words, I would read that as 15. Place value is tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this will be 15 thousandths. That would be 15 over 1,000. If I were asked to simplify that, 15 over 1,000, whoop, math, enter twice. Hold on a second. So that simplified would be 3. If you're given 513 thousandths as a decimal, that would be 10 thousandths, 513. And if we write it in words, 113 thousandths with a THS at the end. If we have a mixed number, this would be the word and. We would have 12 hundredths with the THS. As a mixed number, it will be 8 and 12 over 100. Both of those are divisible by 4, so that will be 8 and 3 over. If we are comparing decimals, we will compare them and greater than or equals. As we're comparing this first set, they're both negative numbers. So they're comparing the 5s first, and then what we have next is a 7 and a 3. If it's negative, you're looking for the number that is closer to 0 on the number line. Think in reverse. So in this case, the larger number would be the negative 0.53 because that's closer to 0. That would be greater than, that would be larger than the negative 0.57. As we're comparing this next one, they both start with 176. That is the same for both. Then we have the decimal, which would be the and our next place value is where we have a difference. We have a 1.7. Since they're both positive, the value that's larger is the greater one. So the greater one here would be 7, the one on the right. So your inequality symbol is going to be open to the larger value. Next, we are looking at rounding decimals to a place value to the right of the decimal point. So if we're rounding, first you want to locate the digit that you are going to round to. So if I wanted to round to the 10th place, what I would like for people to do is to underline the place value that you're rounding to. Look at the number beside. That number is going to determine if you round up or not. If you're between 0 and 4, the number I underlined stays the same. Between 5 and 9, you will, in this case, the 4 would make this stay the same, so it would round and say 8.3. If I had, let's say, 9.7281, and let's say for this one, I want to round to the hundredths place, I would count tenths, hundredths. I would look at the number to the side. This is an 8. 8 would make the 2 round up. So round up to 9.73. The 8 makes the 2 go up to a 3. If this one we're going to round to the nearest tenth, I'm going to first underline the tenths place and look at the digit beside. That's a 3. The 3 would make the 8 stay the same, so my rounded answer is a 0.8. This one I'm going to round to the nearest thousandths. So I need to identify that place value. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The thousandths is the 1. Look at the digit beside. The 7 is between 5 and 9. So that means I'm going to round the digit side of it up by 1. That's going to give me 9.32. It's going to round up to the 2. Round the monetary amount to the nearest dollar. Money is rounding to the nearest dollar, so that means we're rounding to the ones place. This 2 is going to 7 stay the same, so rounded to the nearest dollar, it would be $97. Round to the nearest cent. Money rounds 2 decimal places. Tenths, hundredths, money goes 2 places. So we look at the third digit, the 8, falls between 5 and 9, and it's going to make it round up to 82 cents. During a marathon, was the winner in the women's wheelchair division with a finishing time of 0.3145 hours. Round this time to the nearest hundredth of an hour. Tenths, hundredths, let me write this a little bigger, 3.3145. Rounding to the nearest hundredth. Tenth, hundredth, The 4 would make the 1 stay the same, so this would be rounded to 3.31. And last but not least, this one they're asking to round to the nearest dollar. That would be the 6. The 3 would make the 6 stay the same, so that would round to $86.